Happy Independence Day in advance to all our viewers. Thanks so much for tuning to the Trade Setup with me, Neeraj Shah. Let's take stock of the global markets. And the US markets did okay yesterday. The futures may be flat, but it was a good outing of trade for the Dow and the Nasdaq. Nasdaq in particular 2.5% higher after the inflation data, and I'll come to that in a moment. Remember, as a result of what US has done, let's move on to the Asian plate as well. There is, don't look at China per se individually because China does its own thing, but largely there seems to be a tinge of optimism around the global markets. Now, what happened? I think that's the key thing. The US producer price index rose less than forecast, and as a result of which stocks rally. Remember, the consumer price inflation data comes out today, but ahead of that, there's a big shot in the arm. Yields, in fact, came off as well. Oil was lower as slowing global demand overshadowed the Iran-Israel tensions. Starbucks rallied 24% after the company replaced the CEO. And now the belief is that there's a growth CEO coming in with new ideas because Starbucks has failed to deliver growth in the last 12 odd months. So therefore, that number was the reason why I brought it up. 24% uptick in Starbucks as well. And in other news, Reliance and Disney have offered concessions to win antitrust nod for media merger as per Reuters report. So keep this development in mind as well. But Gift Nifty implying about a 43-point uptick. Not surprised. What surprised me was the mood in trade yesterday, because I was of the opinion that the markets would have a positive bias in trade yesterday as well. So a bit of a surprise for me, particularly yesterday, but a likely reversal on cards. I think the bias is still towards the upside. Maybe a bit of a consolidation, maybe a bit of a pullback, but largely the bias is towards the upside currently. So bear that in mind. We'll see some bit of signs today as well. The Bank Nifty pain, and I think yesterday the key culprit was the Bank Nifty, right? Because of HDFC Bank, and that was because of the MSCI release. Now, that pain, if that's contained, there might be a bit of a stabilization in HDFC Bank today, and that might just help the Bank Nifty not be in a corrective phase in the session today, which might actually be a big spurt. Now, the interesting piece is, viewers, yesterday, that despite the market looking very sluggish, obviously some stocks do well, but the wind equipment stocks, power equipment stocks did really well in trade yesterday. And now they're trading at significant premiums, and therefore some caution should be warranted. In fact, speaking of sectors, I thought just bring you very quickly what happened or what are the key takeaways of the MK conference. They have two-day conference. NDTV Profit was the exclusive media partner. And what's come out from there? 2 or 3 things. One, there is continued sign of rural demand picking up, and in fact urban is not. So therefore you might want to pivot your portfolios a little bit towards some rural focus plays as well. So that's part one. Part two, deposits are emerging as a worry, and there might be an upward normalization of credit costs for banks. So that's the second piece that you want to watch out for. Maybe BFSI and banks in particular may not be the best ports of call relative to some of the other sectors, but valuations are in their favor. What might be a concern for investors in the MFI space is that MFIs at the MK conference have cited a very strong likelihood of wage inflation kicking in. There have been some issues with regards to collections and people going out for that. So therefore, wage inflation is going to be a very big thing to watch out for. So NIMs may contract for MFIs in the quarters to come, so keep an eye out for that. By the way, gold loan companies are coming out smelling like roses. The guidance have been raised, and I'll talk about one of them. So that's the other bucket on the financial space. Some key results today: Equinox Real Estate, Glenmark Pharma, HAL. HAL is an important one, KNR Construction, Mazagon Dock. So both HAL and Mazagon Dock, 2 premium PSU names coming out with numbers today. Watch out for some of those. A very long list of stocks. I'll rush through them, okay? So Hinzinc may be in focus. Vedanta is going to sell 2.6% stake through an OFS. Usually this gets digested very well. So keep an eye out. Don't believe that this will continue to correct. Yesterday, all metals corrected. Now, some of the weak numbers. NBCC miss on all counts. Revenues were up just 11.3% at 2144 crores versus the estimate of 2700 crores. And operating profit margins at 4.27 versus 2.96. Seems good, right? But the estimate was 6.3%. So miss on all counts for NBCC. Very likely could correct today. Let's move quickly to some of the others. Ahluwalia Contracts. Revenues were up 20%, but PAT was down 40%. Again, a margin miss. 6.53 versus 10.81. Estimates were about 10%. Very likely could see a bit of a negative reaction here. HEG, the stock may have done what it did yesterday, but look at the numbers. Very, very weak. Revenues down 15%, PAT down 83%. Operating margins at 6.8 versus 22.5. Look at the drop in margins. Very likely could correct today. I would suspect it will correct today, but let's wait and watch. MTAR Tech. Revenues down 16%, PAT down 78%. Again, Margins the culprit. Operating margins at 12.7 versus 22.8. 1,000 basis points cut in margins. The estimates were 18.4. So keep an eye out for MTAR Tech. This one could have a weak outing. Landmark Cars. Revenues were up okay, but PAT down 53%. Again, margins came off 5.8 versus 6.4. The estimate was 5.8, but not quite living up to a billing of urban consumption play, Landmark Cars. And I think the Volkswagen piece is not quite working for them, but certainly a stock that has corrected a bit and may see a bit of a weakness too. We saw what happened to RT Industries yesterday because of a weak performance and weak guidance. I'm not saying the same could happen to Anupam, but despite optically looking good because of a low base, relative to estimates on all counts, Anupam Rasayan disappointed. Operating profit margins 20.8 versus expected 23.4, and PAT 2 came off 76% up to 12.2%, but the estimate was 36 crores, and therefore a bit of a weakness for Anupam Rasayan expected today. So these were a few. Actually, All Cargo is the last one. Again, a wobbly set of numbers. Revenues up 16% at 38112 crores. Operating profit margins at 3.5 versus 4.2. The estimate was 4.6. PAT down 96% at 4.28 crores. The estimate was 33 crores. So a lot of weak numbers. Now, let's give you good news as well. There's some numbers which came out well. Let's very quickly pull up some of those. So Muthoot Finance, strong quarter, robust traction in gold AUM, and they've given a very good guidance. They're aiming at 15% AUM growth. In fact, Manappuram has done the same, viewers. So watch out for both Muthoot and Manappuram. Could well turn out to be stocks which move in tandem today. Muthoot, the guidance around branches as well, looking pretty okay. So watch out for both of these. Then Texmaco Rail, revenues up 36%, PAT up to 50%, very strong expansion in margins, 7.9 versus 3.1. Couldn't find too many faults, but for valuations, very likely could do well today. Then there was Marksans Pharma. I thought the estimated numbers seemed a bit conservative because operating margins did so well, and PAT 26% higher at 89 crores. The estimates were just 26 crores, but could react today. Smart investor Kenneth Andrade in this one as well. Watch out for this one in the session today. May react positively. Techno Electric, good numbers. Revenues up 36%. PAT up 288%. Margins 13.9 versus 7.74. Could do well today. Watch out for this one as well. And then Valor Estates, revenues up 79 versus 2.43. The EBITDA positive versus a loss as well. And remember, they've signed that big contract with L&T as per newspaper reports of 20,000 crores where they have 40% share. So watch out for this one. Astra Microwave, robust numbers. Revenues up 16%, a profit after tax versus a loss, and operating profit margins at 15.5 versus just 2.3%. The estimate was 3.9. What a blowout set of numbers. SJVN did okay too. Revenues up 29%, 870 crores. Operating profit margin steady. PAT numbers looking okay. So did well. Watch out for this one as well. There are some stocks, very quickly I'll mark them. Piramal Enterprises was weak. There is a CLSA downgrade on that one to underperform. Target price has been cut to 860. With like I said, IPCA was an all-round miss, so therefore that one could see a bit of a reaction downwards. And like I said, HEG, MTAR, All Cargo, all looked very, very weak. Gravita India was interesting. There is a Motilal Oswal initiating coverage report with a target price of 2350. The current market price is 1800. So do watch out for that one. 16 stocks in F&O band that should raise a cause of worry, but let's wait and watch. I still think the bias is towards the upside. Thanks so much for tuning into the Trade Setup today.